Welcome back. I thought today was a good time to talk about some Starcade. Yep. I've gone through 10 WrestleManias, but, I watched a lot of NWA, and it started apparently in 86, because I looked at Starcade 85. There was also Starcade 83 and 84. And while there were some matches I remembered from 85, I know I didn't watch that event. I think they broadcast some of the matches after on free TV. But either way, Starcade 86, I know I watched this one. Some of it's definitely more memorable than other parts. It was definitely very Southern. And the NWA was very, very Southern until Eric Bischoff came in and made it more of a WWF style production. But one thing that I liked with NWA and I enjoyed about their shows was the matches were right away. Sometimes the matches were 10 seconds. Like, you'd have the Mulkey brothers in the ring. Um, and no matter who came out, they were going to lose in about 10 seconds. So, but still, it was fun to watch. It was fun wrestling. This was a good event. So starting off the night, 7 minutes and 30 seconds is what it took for Tim Horner and Nelson Royal to defeat Rocky and Don Kernodle. And a lot of people watching this are going, who, and who. The one that I remember the best was Tim Horner. I thought there was some potential there with him. Never really reached the upper echelon. Then the next match is Brad Armstrong and Jimmy Garvin, and that went a full 15-minute draw. And I loved that with the NWA. The first time I saw a draw, I was like, that happened? There's a draw? And we don't get that in wrestling anymore. And I know we get that with AEW at times, but WWE would be smart to have the occasional 15 or 20-minute draw. Just, it adds to the feud, and it adds this idea of, hey, things aren't quite settled yet. And Jimmy Garvin was one of my favorite wrestlers. I thought Jimmy Garvin was a lot of fun to watch. Him and Precious, I thought it was fun. Then 7 minutes and 25 seconds is what it takes for Hector Guerrero and Baron von Raschke, the Iron Claw, defeats Shaska Pezwatli and the Barbarian. And I remember this match pretty darn well because Baron von Raschke is difficult to forget. And it was just one of those kind of fun matches. Absolutely a fun match. Yeah, I don't have a whole lot else to say about that, but yeah, kind of a fun match. 9 minutes and 10 seconds is what it takes for the Russian team of Crusher Khrushchev and Ivan Koloff to defeat the Kansas Jayhawks, Bobby Jaggers and Dutch Mantel. Yeah, Dutch Mantel, to retain the U.S. tag titles. The Russian team was interesting because I thought Crusher Khrushchev was a kind of a fun character with Ivan Koloff. But where it was interesting was that Nikita Koloff had turned face. And so the other Russians, and still keeping them as heels, Nikita Koloff was one of the most over faces I ever saw. And he cut the most awesome promos of the time. I love Nikita Koloff promos. And this was a time period, too, where the Magnum TA accident had taken place. I think that's why Koloff was turned heel. I think the plan was for him, for Magnum TA to have that spot, or turned face. Nikita Koloff was turned face. I think it was after the Magnum TA accident and they had to pivot, and Nikita Koloff, fantastic. This is prior to Sting, of course, being a member of the NWA, what would become WCW. Wahoo McDaniel, 9 minutes and 5 seconds for him to defeat Rick Rude in a strap match. I remember this. Wahoo McDaniel was one of my favorite wrestlers. I just really enjoyed his wrestling. I obviously became a fan of his towards the end of his career, but still, a lot of fun to watch. And I always thought it was a shame that when WWF became mainstream, Wahoo never got a run there of any sort. So because WCW went under, and because WCW also pivoted away from the NWA portion of their history, I feel like some of these events are kind of forgotten, because who's broadcasting Starcade 86 right now? There may very well be a video of it on YouTube. Absolutely. Nope. I forget sometimes what platform I'm on. My point is, NWA events from back then don't get a lot of discussion or a lot of attention, comparatively speaking with back then, because they did. And Wahoo McDaniel was a lot of fun to watch. So if you get a chance to check out that match, I would recommend it. 10 minutes and 24 seconds. Sam Houston defeats Bill Dundee by disqualification in a Central States title match. So, various regional titles in the NWA. And Sam Houston, I remember I was okay with Bill Dundee. It was one of those matches where I was like, guess. 4 minutes. It takes Jimmy Valiant to defeat Paul Jones in a hair versus hair match. Jimmy Valiant promos were something else. Jimmy Valiant gave his promo skills were different. Um, yeah, I would say that feud between him and Paul Jones, some of those promos were absolutely fantastic. 11 minutes and 50 seconds. Big Bubba Rogers defeats Ron Garvin in a street fight. They made Big Bubba Rogers look like a really big deal. They made it seem like he was the most badass of badasses. And I bought into it hook, line, and sinker. So when he became Big Boss Man in WWF, I was actually kind of disappointed because it felt like the Big Bubba Rogers character was more threatening and more ominous. Now, of course, doesn't mean Bubba was a great wrestler, but there was definitely some gravitas to when he'd take off the hat and the sunglasses and start getting involved. You knew that things were about to get pretty darn serious. I think he always had the hat and I know he always wore the suit. But yeah, Big Bubba Rogers defeats Ron Garvin, which shows how much they were trying to build him up because Ron Garvin was a main eventer at points too at the NWA. 7 minutes and 30 seconds. Oh, I remember this. Tully Blanchard defeats Dusty Rhodes for the NWA TV title. Dusty Rhodes against the Horsemen, one of my favorite programs ever. And he had his feud with Flair, he had his feud with Blanchard, pretty sure he had a feud with Arn as well. And Lex, like he had his feuds with the Horsemen, but he was willing to put them over. You know, Tully goes over here. Tully generally was a pretty good singles wrestler. So again, with history being as it is, we remember Arn and Tully as a tag team, but I'm old enough to remember Tully was a pretty good singles wrestler too. Again, just the slingshot suplex, my favorite finisher maybe ever. Just simplistic, and it made it look like there was more force to the suplex. But yeah, Tully Blanchard was a pretty darn good wrestler in his own right. 7 minutes it takes the Road Warriors to defeat the Midnight Express in a Skywalkers match. So this was tagged the night of the Skywalkers, and it was on all the promo materials. The most awkward match I've ever watched, where I was terrified somebody was gonna get badly hurt, is this Skywalkers match. And you couldn't have like a real wrestling match fight on top of a scaffold. It was basically on top of a scaffold. Famously, Jim Cornette takes the fall from the scaffold there, which just looked awful because we all knew Cornette wasn't a wrestler. So there was that. And of course, Bubba Rogers ends up getting up there because, of course, he does. But the Road Warriors win this, and this is one of my favorite feuds. Road Warriors, Midnight Express. I'd put that right up with Midnight Express against the Rock and Roll Express. And the Rock and Roll Express were the next tag match. They defeated the Minnesota Wrecking Crew, which was Arn and Ole Anderson. This would have been one of Ole's last matches. Ole didn't wrestle that long after I started watching wrestling. Arn did. Ole did not. In fact, I'm kind of convinced that if Arn decided tomorrow, you know what? I'm going to put my Glock away and I'm going to go wrestle. I think he could do it. But the Rock and Roll Express were fun, and it was the reason why when the Rockers became a tag team in WWE, I went, although they were the Midnight Rockers in AWA before that, and it is hard to have any kind of copyright over a wrestling look. So there was that. But yeah, the Rock and Roll Express defeat the Minnesota. I'll change that to Minnesota, and we'll just pretend I didn't write Minnesota. No idea why I did that. Maybe it's my fourth video of the day, so that's part of it. Anyways, Minnesota Wrecking Crew, and yeah, Arn and Ole Anderson, damn good tag team. And then a 20-minute main event. Ric Flair and Nikita Koloff in what ends up being a double DQ in a world title match. Rick does not have a K in Ric Flair either, so we'll take the K off Ric Flair. What else did I screw up with the spelling? Well, we'll find out. But yeah, Flair and Nikita Koloff, that was a pretty damn good match. Flair always had good matches. And his style of wrestling would change depending on who he was against. And he generally made other people look better. So we can look at Ric Flair and talk about how often he had the title. And we could compare him to others who maybe squashed guys like Cena did during his run or Triple H did during his run. I never really got that with Flair. Flair, it felt like, was a guy who could be champion and could win matches, or in this case, it's a double DQ, and still make the other guy look really badass. And he did that with Nikita Koloff. And I was rooting for Koloff so much going into that match. But I don't remember the result making me mad. That Flair was still champ, but Nikita Koloff didn't lose the match either. So normally we would call them dusty finishes, wouldn't we? Dusty roads being on the card and all that. But normally it depends with the dusty finish. If you're gonna have a bit of a schmoz at the finish, it's acceptable in some cases and not in others. Now, what's interesting with this event was it was from two different locations: Greensboro Arena, which of course is in Greensboro, North Carolina, and the Omni in Atlanta. So this was from two different locations, and it went pretty well. I don't remember any major problems with production or anything like that. And this was at a time where Jim Crockett Promotions was legitimately the number two in North America in terms of wrestling. And people were watching this. This was pretty popular. Not WWF popular, but yeah, it was definitely popular. And I kind of preferred this product over WWF's because while it's very regional in how it's booked and in the characters they have, I just felt like it was better wrestling. I thought the promos were better, and I kind of preferred not to have all the celebrities all the time. I kind of preferred the more just stripped down, okay, these are the wrestlers, and this is what we're going to use to sell the product. And it worked. I, for a while there, preferred NWA programming to WWF. It's just WWF programming was on Sunday afternoon, Saturday afternoon. I'm just talking about like just the Superstars show and Maple Leaf Wrestling and all these other. We had the weekly shows, and for me to watch NWA, I think it was 1 in the morning my time, and it was on KSTW out of Seattle. It was not easy to find, and I remember the first time I watched it, my eyes just bugged out. I'm like, what is this? Is great. What is this? And then I was hooked. I watched it every week from then on. But yeah, it was definitely worth staying up till 1 in the morning to watch every week. And I thought Starcade '86 was a pretty darn good event. So there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. Hit like and subscribe in the event you may not have done so already. So I may go to Chi-Town Heat next. I may go to WrestleMania 11 next. You just never know. But this was an event I really did enjoy. And some of the bonkers promos. Jimmy Valiant would be the one that I would talk about as bonkers. Nikita Koloff, absolutely. Jimmy Garvin was very over the top. So yeah, there was some good promos on this. And yeah, let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support as always. I will talk to you again soon.